is if reincarnation exists, how is it possible to communicate with the spirit of a deceased person, question mark? Where are they at that point, question mark? And what is the relationship between that point and reincarnated life? And they put love hearts. They put love hearts.
It's a very interesting and exciting question for me because as a scientist all my life I did not believe in spirituality. And I was into genes and chromosomes and cells and all that stuff. But in understanding the nature of that membrane that I talked about in the lecture, I started to recognize something which I'm going to talk about tomorrow as well, and that is our identity is not inside our body. Our identity is picked up by protein antennas on the surface of our cells. The reality is our source is from the outside, and the signals get picked up by the proteins and then control the cells on the inside. The significance for me at that moment, besides the shock of, oh my God, I'm not in here, was the simple reality that I said, oh my, it's like the body is like a television set and there's a broadcast coming in. And the relevance about that is sometimes the television breaks, you say the television's dead. And I say, yeah, but is the broadcast still there? And the answer is, indeed the broadcast is still there. That doesn't change because the body comes and goes. And I said, well, what about it? And I said, well, since we're being picked up by a specific set of proteins called antennas, self-receptors is the biological name, the relevance is, what if a future embryo comes with the exact same set of self-receptors? No two people have the same set of self-receptors. I have to tell you right now, no two people are receiving the same broadcast. And the significance is that if an embryo shows up with the same set of self-receptors, then you're back online again. Now, can you communicate with them? Not through the physical means, because they're not communicating with physicality to us. Now, if you get your recognition, as we talked about, mind is not even in the body. If you get your mind in the outside, there's an opportunity at a level to communicate. Let me just add this one, because this is an exciting story to emphasize the nature of that we're still there. There's a number of studies of people who have heart transplants. And when they receive a transplant for somebody else, they start to pick up characteristics of the person who donated the heart. Now, some people say that's cellular memory. As a cellular biologist, I think you're giving great credit of memory to a cell. A cell is lucky to remember if it's a liver cell or a skin cell, not if it likes chicken McNuggets and beer, okay? But the story I just want to emphasize and close it with is simply this. A young girl received a heart from another young girl. And once the heart was implanted, just shortly after, she had very vivid nightmares of being murdered. And they repeated themselves every night. And so finally, the doctor said, well, where did this heart come from? And it was from another girl who was murdered. And the relevance about that was the nightmares were so vivid that when the police questioned her about what she had seen, they were able to catch the killer. The point was the heart cells are still having the self-antennas of the person who has died. And so as long as the heart was still present, it was downloading the identity into that heart. And the relevance is, yes, the girl's dead, but she's still there. Why? Because if the heart has the receptors, it still shows that there's a source that's feeding this individual person. Between all this particular data, it is profoundly important to understand the nature of some quantum physics, energy fields, and identity, and that we are not in this body. We are being broadcast to this body. To close, my second closing now, I think. The second closing was, as a scientist, and not spiritual for 40-some years, and then in 1 minute after understanding the nature of the membrane, it's like 2 + 2 is 4. I'm not in here. It was oh my God, I'm not here. And that concept of being outside, then being immortal, was interesting. But then I wanted to add this part because I thought this was the exciting part about my connection with my spirit and my body. I asked myself as a scientist, I said, well, why have a body and a spirit? Why not just be spirit? Well, at that moment, 50 trillion cells welled up. An answer came right up through those cells. And that's when I recognized I had Jewish cells. I asked a question, and the cells answered with a question. And they're very funny cells, so here's how it goes. I said, why have a spirit and a body? Why not just be a spirit? And the cells welled up and said, Bruce, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like? And if you get the answer for that is this. This is a virtual reality suit. You jump into the suit, you drive it around, the experiences of this suit are sent back to source. That's where we start to recognize your brain activity is not contained in your head. You can use magnetoencephalograph probes outside of your head, and you can read your brain activity. So you're broadcasting back to the field. And that's why we can see a sunset. We can taste that chocolate. We can smell that rose. And then all of a sudden it says, oh my God, we came here to experience life and to create. And then all of a sudden I said, oh, the whole story might be the biggest cosmic joke in the world, and that is this. We have been told that when we die, if we did a good job on planet Earth, we can go to heaven. I would like to suggest something. You were born into heaven. This is where you came to create. This is where you came to experience. If you don't like the creation, the significance, as we talk about between Joe and Greg and myself, is we're not living our lives, we're living the lives of programs. And if you don't like the program, the new biology is the one that says you can rewrite it. And if you rewrite it to make your creation not the one you bought as the creation, you will manifest heaven on earth. You will wake up every day with the glory of being in the most spectacular planet and the ability to create life. And that's what the joy is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Amigo. Not much I can add to that, but one piece that takes it well beyond the realm of theory. Scientists now are very, very certain that our memories, let's make it personal, it's about you and me. I apologize, my back has been to this side of the room, and I don't know if these pants make my butt look big when I'm in this chair to this side of the room or what. So what scientists now know is the memories are not in the cells. And this is a very different way. This goes right to the heart of reincarnation. It's a very different way of thinking about things. But let me just give you an example. How many of you in here are musicians or artists? Any musicians in here? Or have learned a foreign language? Anybody here learn a foreign language? Okay, that's a good example. So you know when you begin learning a foreign language, the words sometimes, they seem awkward. You learn phonetically, and you say the words, but they don't really mean much. And all of a sudden, you wake up one morning, and like you're speaking Spanish, or you're speaking Tibetan, or you're speaking French, or whatever it is. You know how that happens. All of a sudden, it's like almost overnight, and you say, well, what happened? Well, here's what the science is now telling us. All possibilities exist as information in the field. The information is not in the cells. What we do in the cells is we grow, and Bruce, it's exactly the term that I use, what are called soft antennae. So the way that the neurons wire and fire create the antenna that tune to the place in the field where that information lives, where that foreign language lives. I'm a guitar player, and when I'm trying to learn to play a song for one of my favorite, Michael Hedges was a brilliant guitarist before he passed a few years ago. and to try to learn to play like Michael Hedges for me. I'd go through the motions, and one morning I woke up, and man, it was like I was thinking like Michael Hedges, and I knew what the tuning was. And you say, well, what happens in the space between when it's awkward and between when you've got it? And that is the answer to what this question is all about. When we, I'm just going to say it like this. It is the very act, of you striving to become more in one moment than you were in the last moment. It's the act of you reaching deep within yourself to grasp a new way of thinking. So a new language, or a new song on a guitar, a piano, or a new book to write, or a new title, or new poetry, or new sculpture, new art, whatever it is, that act is the impetus for the neurons to wire together to create the antenna that reach into the field where that information lives that you are asking to have access to. But the thing is, it doesn't happen spontaneously. It takes about 72 hours is what the studies are showing. About 3 days. And if you're with me tomorrow, I'm going to show you a little video clip of this. It takes about 3 days for the neurons they're very social cells. They love to hook up. So it takes about 3 days for these neurons to hook up, to reach out and firmly establish the connection with another like neuron so that they're forming the antenna that tune to the place in the field where everything that you desire to understand or know or create or perform, it already exists. So the reason I'm saying this is if you are choosing to create something new and it doesn't come to you easily at first, please do not give up. Because it takes about at least 3 days for these antennae to wire. That is because the information is not in here. Just to add to this, how real this is, researchers in Silicon Valley are now building the next generation computer chips, and guess what? They're not based on silica. They're based on droplets of water that are purified and very, very specific forms of structured water. And when they started pumping the information into that droplet of water, the water droplet was holding more information than could possibly be explained by the chip itself. And they said, where is the information going? And now they know that the chip based in water is storing information in a field that expands beyond the machine itself. It is in the field. And that could not happen if these ideas were not correct. So I'm showing you it's going beyond theory, that we're actually moving to build the machines to reflect what is happening in nature, what's happening between you and me. So when you think of all of those things, back to the idea of reincarnation, what we're doing is we are tuning to information in the field. And we're using our neurons to do that. And that, I think, is, and this is what all of our work is all about, the emotions that we have, the heightened emotions that Joe talks about and I'm talking about, those emotions are what trigger the neurons to combine, to wire in a way so that we can communicate with that field in a meaningful way. So it's a new, very different way of thinking for some people, but this is where the science is going, and I think it speaks directly to the question of reincarnation. Yeah, thank you.